Hi, K's fans. It's KTV, brought to you in association with Bright Light Windows and Doors. James Barrett and Hayden Bird here. Going to do a little bit of a review. We can call this like a halfway point for the season, I'd say roughly. So we're going to look back from August onwards, and we've got some exciting new stuff to talk about as well, squad developments and the home for the team next season, etc. So Hayden, just asked firstly, did you enjoy your Christmas time?
Yeah, really nice Christmas with the family. Thank you. And how about yourself?
Yeah, pretty much the same. So it was all good. Thank you. So just looking back from August onwards, then where would you assess the team are at this present moment in time?
I think we're in good conditions. I think the team obviously had a fantastic start to the season. That gave everybody a big boost, a big belief in what we're achieving. I think that the only reason that we're not currently in a playoff position, nicely nestled in the top 5, is simply the fact that other teams have played 3 more games than us. But I would suggest that we're where we wanted to be, where I expected us to be. And the exciting point is for Kingstonian, I think, is that there's still big scope for improvement. So I would expect the performances and the results to improve with the second half of the season. Yeah,
I was going to ask what the aspirations for the rest of the season may be. Obviously, we had a good little run in the FA Trophy, but the league's always been the main priority. Like you say, we're just outside the playoffs, but are you hoping we can get back to that kind of form that we showed in August and September and go on a little run again?
Well, I think the team are in that form, quite honestly. My job and my experience tells me that you can't always judge performances on results, because results can cloud your judgment. The historic game is a typical example of that. You know, if you create 24 good goal scoring opportunities, yes, of course, it shows you that you're not being anywhere near clinical enough in the final third, but it shows you that you're playing well and you're playing the football that we want to see. You don't create those opportunities and not be doing your job right. You know, football is football. Sometimes, unfortunately, you don't get your just rewards. You know, watching Chelsea the day afterwards, Chelsea played Everton. If I turned the telly off after 15 minutes and turned it back on at the end of the game and saw it was 1-1, you'd never have believed it. In the same way that anybody in the ground for the first 25 minutes of the historic game, if they'd left the ground and seen that we'd lost, wouldn't have believed it. But that's football, and that can happen. It won't be the first time, it won't be the last time. I think what's important in games like that is you have to be level-headed, you have to be philosophical about it. You can't get too emotional. You can't get too high when we win. And you can't have the attitude of mind that the wheels have fallen off and we're not going to do this and we're not going to get promoted and we're not going to make the playoffs, etc. when we have setbacks, because there will be bumps in the road and there will be setbacks. But in the bigger picture, I think we're definitely on course. To answer the original question, I will say what I said to the first question. We're only outside of playoffs because teams have played 2 and 3 more games than Kingstonian. But I think that when everybody plays the same amount of games as we will, we'll be nestled very well in the playoffs. And I think with an important festive period, if you can still call it that now, going into the new year, if we do our job in these games, I think we're really, really well set up to challenge for promotion in the second half of the campaign.
Do you have a personal preference in terms of having those games in hand, or would you prefer to have at least had them played so you got some more, potentially more points on the board?
I mean, you'd always take points on the board, no question about it. But listen, if we're involved in cup competitions and have games cancelled and other teams are playing, there's nothing that we can do. The league table lies. I think the teams above us are all great teams, and I think that they'll all be in it, in the mix come the end of the season. I don't think any of those teams are going away, and I think you can add the likes of Hornchurch and Margate and Carshalton into the challenging teams as well. But I'm happy with what I'm seeing. Particularly happy after the Aldershot game where, you know, okay, we were heroic losers in the end, but we only lost to 2 free goals. And to go to a National League club and really outplay them for the 90 minutes is indicative of the progress that Kingstonian are making.
Yes, that result still needles me a little bit. I know it's been a couple of weeks now, but people will look at that on paper and think, yeah, of course Aldershot won, but we were by far the better team, and it really gives that kind of hope moving on for the future. The boys are in that little pocket, as you say, and it's just a fact of maybe just converting a few more chances, and we'll be right at the races.
Yeah, the first half of the season is about building, is about performances, is about foundations. The second half of the season, quite simply, is about results. And if we have to take scruffy 1-0s, and if we play badly and we win 1-0, or if we're away from home and we're not at the races, but we come away with a point, all of these things will be important in the second half of the campaign. And that's the transition that we have to make. We can't have another East Thurrock. We can't have another game where we are so dominant that we don't come away with 3 points. We do have to improve by putting these teams to bed early. And we also have to be honest and say we have conceded soft goals. So games at times have been too difficult. We look back at the Margate game where we won 3-1 and played very, very well. We conceded a soft first goal. We were a little bit fortunate and very thankful for Rob Tolfrey for a tremendous double save. A game that after 25 minutes, we had 80% of the ball, but could have been 2-0 down. That's indicative of how we need to improve. And if we're going to control games and dominate games, we have to make sure that we have the ability to ensure that that domination becomes opportunities, becomes goals, becomes victories.
Is it okay if we just have a quick mention about the squad updates? Obviously, there's been one in and one out for anyone that hasn't seen that, one that's left and one that's come in. Could you just give us a little bit of balance on why Calvin's joined and Javan's made a move?
Yeah, so let's start with Javan. Javan is a really good player. He's a really good lad, and I've really enjoyed working with him. A humble guy, an ambitious player, and I think that the level of improvement in his performances has been immense. So, popular guy in the dressing room, and isn't someone that we really wanted to lose. The reason that Javan has moved on is simply, I had conversations with Javan. I felt that in the first 2 months of the season, he was nothing short of outstanding. Maybe his performances just tailed off a little bit. And, I think that can be said of many players. So not a criticism of Javan. But importantly, Nyron has been converted into a right back. And since then, I think he's been in the top 3 players at the club. So if players come to me and they ask honest questions, they'll get honest answers. Javan wanted to play every week. He felt that he's at the time of his career where he deserved to play every week. And you know what? I think he's right, because in this level of football, he can play every week. However, with the emergence of Nyron, I didn't think that it was fair to look him in the eye and tell him he was going to play when clearly he wasn't. So we had to try and find a solution for him. He's gone to Lewes. I'm really pleased that he's gone to a good club. I know they're a promotion rival, and people are saying, well, why are you letting your players move on to promotion rivals? But you know what? I think you have to do the right thing by players. You have to try to do the right thing as a person. I think it's a really good opportunity for Javan. There was a couple of clubs that wanted him. Lewes was one. Cheshunt was the other. I gave him permission to speak to both clubs. He come back to me. We had another chat about his opportunities here, and he's decided to move over to Lewes. And honestly, we offer him our thanks and our best wishes at Lewes. I think it's a good team. He'll improve them, and it'll be good to see him in a few days' time. With regards to Calvin is a player that I've long admired. Calvin coming to my attention when he was at Merstham, where I thought he was their best player by some distance. We spoke to Calvin during the summer. We've kept in touch with Calvin. For one reason and another, we decided that it wasn't quite right back in the summer. but now we decided that it is. He's become available. We're not looking to improve the squad actively, but we are always interested in good players when they become available. And he definitely fits the profile of what we want. Technically, excellent. A real athlete. I think that physically, he gives us the strength and the power, the physical attributes that sometimes we lack. And I think that there's a versatile player in there. There's a player that can play either wing. There's a player that can play as the 10. There's a player that can play as the 9. I think there's a player there that could become a really good number 8 as well. Good guy, good player. And I think he'll be a really, really big addition into our football club once he settles in. We bought Ollie Allen in as well. We discussed that. Ollie's a player that I've got high hopes for. And we wanted to get Teo Games. So Teo is a young player that in order to develop, he needs to go out and play. He's been injured for the last couple of months. I don't think anybody would disagree that Kenny and Gus have probably been the best players in that period. But Teo is a part of our long-term picture. There's no doubt about that. But in the same way as we wanted Elliot to benefit from a loan spell, we want to do the same with Teo now. And I'm sure he will.
Excellent. You touched on it there. Obviously, Javan will be back at King George's Fields just after the new year because we've got Lewes at home. And just a small matter of an away game at Leatherhead as well on New Year's Day. Could you just give us a little bit of a squad overview in terms of who's going to be available for selection? Is anyone missing? Or
yeah, sure. So if we look at the squad for the Leatherhead game, Kingstonian and Declan won't be ready, but they're very close. I think that there's a chance that they can make Lewes. If they don't make Lewes, they'll definitely make Brightlingsea. No question of that. But there's a chance they can make Lewes. Really making excellent progress now. And pretty much ready to go. Declan, we've been very careful with because he obviously come back in against Royston, did really well for half an hour, but then his hamstring gave way again. So we've had to be careful with him now. But under the guidance of Jamie and Steve, I think he's pretty much there. Shane's pretty much there. Probably not quite ready for Leatherhead though. Calvin obviously will come into the squad. Simon Cooper will be missing for that game as well. But I think the best news is that Fabio will definitely be ready to come back in the new year. And I think within the next week, probably Brightlingsea, we'll see Fabio back in the squad and playing for Kingstonian again. So he'll be like a new signing. He's been out so long, really, really nasty injury, a few things that we've had to deal with him, but it will be a delight to have him back. Yeah,
that'd be fantastic. Some more 45-yard free kicks into the top bins would be more than welcome.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. What sort of challenge are you expecting for our visit to Fetcham Grove on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm expecting a really difficult game. I said earlier that the league table lies, and I think it is lying with Leatherhead. I don't think Leatherhead will finish bottom of the league. I think that Leatherhead have players that can hurt you. I've watched a lot of them. I've seen a lot of their videos. We've had them watched. And yeah, they're obviously a club that haven't had an ideal start to the season. But, you know, with Mickey going in there, I think that there's every chance that they will improve. I know Mick thinks a lot of Julian, their coach. I know Julian is looking to throw his hat into the ring as an interim manager to take over permanently in the new year. So we can expect a motivated Leatherhead who are going to fight. And we all know Mick. Mick's a good friend of mine. Mick knows Leatherhead very well. He was probably the most successful manager Leatherhead have had for many, many years. And he's just a good fit for Leatherhead. So I would really expect Mick to go into Leatherhead, put his stamp on it, his personality into the club, his experience into the club, and get Leatherhead out of trouble. I've no doubt that they'll do that. So I think we're going to play a very motivated team. I'm expecting a really tough game. And I think that Leatherhead are a good club that we wish well. Obviously, we want to beat them. But, you know, with Mickey at the helm there, with Julian, I think we can expect a very difficult game.
Does that kind of scupper your preparations when a club like Leatherhead have had a change, a managerial level, they brought in some new faces, etc.? Because conversely, when we played East Thurrock in the trophy, and we obviously walloped them off the park, and then we fell 1-0 to them more recently, does it kind of put like a different spin on how you approach the game, or does it not really matter for you, do you think?
I think every game presents a different challenge, is the answer to the question. You mentioned East Thurrock in the question. I think what we have to do at Leatherhead is show that we've learned the lessons at East Thurrock. I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest we'll probably go there as favourites and we'll dominate the ball. But I think we'll play against a stubborn opponent that can hit you on the counter attack, as East Thurrock did with their one opportunity. And we have to be very wary of that. Obviously, if teams have a stable setup, it's easier to analyse them. If teams are constantly changing, it becomes more difficult. So you have to look at their idea of football and their structure. But I think they've been reasonably settled of late. I know that Mick and Julian are trying to bring 1 or 2 in for our game, so we'll keep a watchful eye on that. But, you know, it's a local derby. And we all know in local derbies, the form book can go out the window. We know in local derbies that the league table means nothing. And we know in local derbies, all the cliches just come out, and I've spouted 2 of them for you. But the bottom line is, I think it will be a very difficult game. We'll be ready. I think the rest that we've had will help us, but Leatherhead have had that rest as well. But we're going into the challenge at Fetcham Grove with our eyes open. There's no doubt about that.
Excellent, good stuff. Just one final question then for you, Hayden. A lot of the fans would have hopefully have seen the news that broke just a couple of days ago that the future of the club will be lying over in Tooting and Mitcham for the next season at least. How did you welcome that news? And obviously, I know a lot of the fans will be thinking, why are we still not getting our own ground, for example? But another stepping stone towards that right direction, I'm thinking. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to let the supporters know is that I'm going to do an interview with Mark Anderson, which is going to go out Friday morning. And I would encourage everybody to listen to that. It's the club's decision. And so it's quite rightly that the club speak about the decision in more detail. You know, obviously I'm football, and Mark and John, Paul, George look after the club in general. So I don't want to steal their thunder. But what can I tell you about it? I understand that the reaction has been a little bit mixed. So to just go through 1 or 2 things as an outline for everybody. First of all, let's thank Corinthian Casuals. I know there's rivalry between the clubs, but there's also some really good people there that have looked after us. Personally, Brian, who looks after the maintenance of the ground, has been tremendous. And in really difficult circumstances, I think John Williams and his team on the ground staff have been brilliant. They've done everything that they can. And, you know, in non-league football, there are limited resources. And I know they've put a lot of effort to maintain that pitch. So must thank them, and look forward to working with those guys between now and the end of the season as well. But the clubs decided the arrangement had to come to an end. So I know that the Kingstonian supporters didn't want to leave the borough. They think it's important that we maintain a presence in the borough. So the first thing that I think is important to say is that the directors felt exactly the same. And as Mark will explain, I'm sure, every possible option was explored to keep Kingstonian in the borough. But, you know, there's a few factors that are out of our hands. The clubs in the borough needed to be prepared to groundshare with Kingstonian. If clubs in the borough are not, there's nothing that we can do. B, we have aspirations of National South football, and so it makes sense to find a stadium that can house National South football. And C, if we want to maintain an Isthmian League status, there's limited availability to that. And of course, the nearer you go towards the M25, the more likely you are to be in the Southern League, which I'm sure the supporters wouldn't want. They want to come to the games. There's a big away presence as well, and I'm sure they will prefer Isthmian League status. So the point that I'm making is there were so many things to take into consideration, and I absolutely applaud the board of directors for how they've handled it and the decision that they've made. They really tried to find a solution that would fit well with the supporters, and they realised it's not ideal. Tooting and Mitcham have a National South Stadium. Tooting and Mitcham are a willing partner, a willing landlord for Kingstonian. And out of all the options available, I think that the club looked at all the transport links and decided it was the easiest solution for the supporters. So what would I say? I would say that we're looking forward to a strong second half of the season at Corinthian Casuals. Looking forward to building new relationships in Tooting and Mitcham. I know the guys at Tooting, and they're really excellent people. I think they'll be great hosts. Myself and the team have spoken about it. All of the players are behind the move. I'm very much behind the move. But the biggest point is that I would say is that the first announcement that the club has made is not the last announcement. So before anybody judges the club, I think that they should keep their powder dry and listen to the forthcoming announcements. And when they hear them, I think that everybody will be very supportive of the decision that the directors have made.
I'm fighting every journalistic bone in my body not to ask you a little bit more about that, but obviously with Jamie and Mark doing an interview for tomorrow, I'll leave it there. But so are you just saying that the crux of the move, obviously setting aside the fact that we want our own ground eventually, that's the end game. The crux is we needed to go somewhere to match the aspirations of the club to go up to the National South, and Tooting was the best fit. Well,
first of all, you can only ground share with a club that wants to ground share.
Well, yeah,
for one. And so that obviously a lot of options were explored, but the options end very quickly if the club doesn't want to ground share. So then you look at the clubs, as you say, that have a National South Stadium. So let me give you, for example, when I was at Merstham and reached the playoff final with Merstham, it terrified the directors because in order to get Merstham up to a National South Stadium, it would have been anything between probably 60 and 80,000 pounds. So even if we had stayed at Corinthian Casuals, I'm guessing that the layout of Corinthian Casuals is not dissimilar to the layout of Merstham. Does it make sense to go into a ground share, spend 60 to 80,000 pounds on a ground to get it up to National South grading as we would have been required to, knowing the fact that our stay in that ground could be very short. So there's all these things that the club had to consider. Listen, transferring players is difficult enough. Believe me, transferring grounds must have been a nightmare for these people. And like I say, the decision that John, Mark, Paul and George has made has been hugely difficult. I had loads of questions. We had a 4 or 5 hour meeting about it. I didn't know about it myself until just before Christmas. But having listened to them, I'm completely supportive of it. I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder. I'm going to allow Mark to speak publicly about it tomorrow. The upcoming announcements, January, February, whenever that is, will allay anybody's fears. I'm certain of that. But what I can tell you is that these people always make decisions within the best interests of the club. The supporters need to trust Mark, John, Paul and George, because ever since I've been here, honestly, they've been working around the clock to find the solutions that Kingstonian needs. And all that I will add to it is that I've committed my long-term future to the club. I've told the football club that my ambitions are to be here very, very much in the long term until they kick me out. And I'm doing that because I completely believe in our project. I completely believe in our directors, and I completely believe in our future at Kingstonian.
Great stuff, great stuff. All very exciting. Can we start a petition to get Mark to change his name to Ringo? Do you think that we might be able to do that?
I think you better ask him that. I'll leave that one with you.
I'll text Jamie and ask him if he can throw it into the interview tomorrow. Hayden, thank you very much for your time as always. Case fans, we're away Saturday, 1st of January, brand new year at Leatherhead, and then the first home game back is at Monday the 3rd against Lewes, kick-off 3 o'clock. Hayden, thanks for all your time. How does a Isthmian Premier manager spend his New Year's Eve?
Of course, maybe a couple of glasses of wine, watching the telly, in bed at 11 o'clock. But the supporters needn't worry that the players will be out on the lash, because there's a breathalyzer waiting for them in the dressing room on New Year's Day, and the fines are quite substantial if they fail it. So I don't think that there'll be any problem.
Like it.
No, seriously. No, speaking honestly, the guys are ready for New Year's Day. It's a really important period, 2 tough games. Lewes as well. Couple of days later, I watched Lewes play at Horsham. Again, a team with promotion aspirations. So there's 2 really important games, but I see these 2 fixtures as really important in the season, and I'm hoping that, you know, we can continue our good work of what we showed in Aldershot, turn the domination of the ball into results, and really look to improve to go on to the next level in the second half of the season. Great stuff, great stuff. Well, Case fans, if you can, 1 and all, 3rd of January, the big one against Lewes, but no small matter against Leatherhead as well. If you can make the trip on Saturday, that would be great. Hayden, thanks for your time as always, and we'll be back with you with some more stuff next week on KTV. Thank you, guys, and Happy New Year to everybody, and thanks for your support. Indeed, and to you, Gaffer, and to you.